Hey, a lot of adulthood is disappointment management, and we in the astronomy outreach community, we like to be space groomers. We like people to join our hobby because half the fun is seeing the object, half the fun is sharing it, and half the fun's bad math. But I'm about to give a scope to a friend, and I'm giving it away because I'll never use it. I bought it for the StarSense Explorer, the dock. I don't need the rest of the telescope, so I'm going to give it away. I'll never use it. It's a great telescope, though. The mount and the stuff around it is garbage, and that's, I call it a garbage scope, but it's not a garbage scope. It's garbage accessories. When you buy a cheap kit, the telescope's probably going to be okay, but the kit is going to be garbage. And so I'm handing her something for free, and it's garbage, and I don't want her to be too disappointed. So that's the whole point of it. If you are about to buy a telescope kit because you want a telescope because you had a good experience, just know that if you buy the garbage kit, you still open up the heavens, literally, to your eyeballs. And you can have a very happy, great time with a garbage telescope. This, by all means, a garbage telescope now. My dad bought this for me when I was 8, and I was happy with it for 30 years. I saw, lots of stuff, including Hale Bopp. That's when I should upgrade it. I was still using this at Hale Bopp. Amazing comic. Anyway, just pointing a telescope at an object in the sky is tough. It's a skill, okay? So even if you get a garbage telescope, you can still build your skills and learn the sky, learn your phone app like Sky Safari, but you can really have a good time. It's just going to be more frustrating. It's going to be more time consuming to get stuff done. Your experience isn't going to be awesome. And there's a really good chance that the first telescope you buy is either going to collect dust or photons. But, rule of thumb is don't buy a kit for more money that you're willing to lose. There's a good chance you're just not going to get into the hobby, or you're going to upgrade at some point. So, that first one is it's a throwaway or a giveaway. So even though you have a garbage scope or given a garbage scope, there are things to learn. And one of the things most of this video is comparing Celestron's lowest level, entry level, and their next higher up. So if you can, the short of this is, if you can and you're going to buy a kit, go ahead and buy the slightly better one, the better mount. Don't get the garbage mount, and we'll go into the details on that. But thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. I tend to answer like all of them. Anyway, space groomer, Anyway, have a great time. Thank you. Bye. Your first scope, it's either going to collect a bunch of dust. If you're lucky, it'll collect some photons, but for the most part, it's going to be dust. Your first scope, you're going to get rid of it. Okay. In most cases, you're going to get rid of it. You may just throw it away, or it'll sit in the closet. In the best case, you're going to get rid of it because you're upgrading to something bigger and better. So that first scope is really you're going to get rid of it. So what's a good scope versus what's a good first scope versus what's a not so good first scope. I'm about to give this to a friend, and I felt really guilty. That's what inspired me to start this. By the way, this is Hobbs. Hobbs will be meowing in the background, but this is him. So what inspired me was I'm going to give this telescope to someone, and it's going to be disappointing in a lot of ways. Just like when you buy your first kit telescope as a first-time buyer, you're going to be disappointed in a lot of ways. Why? Because the kits are, I don't want to say they're garbage, but first-time buyers are not, it's like anything. There are manufacturers who want you to buy their first-time telescope, and since you don't know a great deal about specifications and what's good and what's bad, they will market it as a really high power or 600 power telescope, and it's just a lie. Okay. The good brands, Celestron, Skywatcher, Explore Scientific, there's several. The good budget brands, there's tons of really good brands, expensive brands, but Celestron and Explore Scientific and Skywatcher, they're going to give you good equipment, the best they can, while trying to match the price point of the garbage sellers. Okay, so try to stick to a good brand, but because of that pressure for downward price, they just, this is a decent scope with limitations, but the rest of it, that package of first scope with the tripod and the mounts and eyepieces and all that, That's where it's garbage, okay? Eyepieces can be 250, 400, you can buy $1,000 eyepieces. They're not gonna put a $1,000 eyepiece in your $200 kit. Again, I think this kit's, you can get an 80 millimeter for $90, $100. I don't recommend it, with some caveats later. I did a review on this, the Celestron 102 AZ, really good, $200 at Costco, at Christmas, $150. It's a really solid mount. So what's the difference? As a first scope kit, you're probably either gonna like give these away, get rid of it, or you're going to upgrade. And that's kind of the biggest difference between the ultra cheap and the reasonably cheap. And again, this might cost twice as much as this, okay? But there's some advantages to this. So if I were to give this scope to my friend for her daughter, I wouldn't feel any guilt at all. I'd still say, hey, it's not gonna do, 200 power, 200 magnification on Jupiter very well. It will not, maybe 60 or 70, which is great, okay? This will actually probably do 60 or 70 or 80 on Jupiter as well, because it is you can see it's longer. It's got a smaller lens, 80 millimeter versus 100, so 3.5 inches versus 4 inches, 3¼ inches versus 4 inches, so it's a bigger lens, but you're actually gonna get decent power on this because it's longer, and this smaller lens is not bending the light quite as much. This lens, bigger and shorter, is bending the light quite a bit. It's that extra bit that ruins it's called chromatic aberration. The shorter the focal ratio, from this one's f11, this one's like f6.5, so it's twice as much bending, twice as much or more color aberration, okay? So you're gonna actually do maybe equally, maybe better, smaller, cheaper scope on Jupiter, Saturn. Moon doesn't have a lot of color. What the bigger scope here gets you, the 102, is in the dark, in the desert. City doesn't make that much difference, but in a really dark sky, this is going to get more light. You'll be able to see dimmer objects, okay? The sky really is the limiting factor. This will allow you to get more stuff out of it, okay? Back to, should you buy this or this, okay? If you buy this, the big terrible thing about this is this mount, okay? I'll go into detail these two mounts, so I'll do a deeper comparison of the cheap mount versus, we'll call that the garbage mount, versus the better mount. This mount has standard parts, saddles and dovetails, so I can swap scopes. All these have the same mounting saddle, so I can, a standard dovetail on a telescope will allow you to put it on any mount, okay? This one will not let you upgrade. Because of the mount, the way it's done, it's kind of one piece. You can't put this telescope on a different mount. You won't want to put any other telescope on this mount, okay? So before I go into these two, I'll always have this scope, or one like it. I'll always have a short 4-inch refractor, a cheap one, okay? Because I can throw this in luggage, and I've done it. I've been fortunate to go south to the equator a few times. I will throw this in checked baggage, okay? If it gets broken, I don't care, it's $100, okay? More expensive equipment, okay? But I will always have one of these, okay? These are better because they're more stable, okay? And yeah, these are all alt azimuth, which is the type of mount here. But this is what I use. It's very stable. There's slow motion controls on this and that. The good ones, you can adjust the tension and you can do it by hand. A lot of people do like the slow motion controls, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I'm going to focus on these two. Before I get into the mounts, there are a couple other things. So standard parts. When you buy something, and again, there's limited upgrading you can do on this. This is a standard, just about anything you can talk about accessories works on this. You got a standard shoe for a finder, so you can do a red dot finder or an optical finder. Optical finder, this will slide right in. It also slides in over here. So this is not standard. So A red dot finder will be fine. You can use a red dot finder in any of these. You just don't have the upgrade options, not as easily. Okay, so that's not a big deal. The focuser. So we'll talk about eyepieces. Again, these eyepieces are garbage. The ones that come in kits are garbage. And astronomers with a lot of telescopes, they have a drawer full of these and they give them out for Halloween. I don't know if it's a trick or a treat, but they're garbage. We don't use them. We will spend money, and this is where the secret is. You can spend a lot of money on eyepieces, and you will if you get into it. So like, for example, this is like a $500 eyepiece. This is $250. Astronomics.com. Very nice. It's a 28 millimeter, 82 degrees. That's a really good eyepiece for $250. But the eyepieces that come in the kit are garbage, but you can upgrade them. So for example, this is a really nice eyepiece. Very good quality, very good experience at the eyepiece, at the telescope. I can put this. They come in 2 barrel diameters, 1 1/4 and 2 inches. Okay, the 2 inches allow you to go wider in 2 ways, but they will not fit in this focuser. You cannot get a 2-inch eyepiece in this focuser. And on the 4-inch, the AZ102, you can get a 2-inch. As you can see, there's a 2-inch on here, and you can also put 1 1/4s in there. If you can get the 2-inch, that's a big plus. Can you get by without the 2-inch? Absolutely. So if you are buying or were gifted a telescope that does not have a 2-inch focuser, 2-inch draw tube for the focuser for the diagonal, you can have a very good life with the telescope with just a 1 1/4 inch eyepieces. Okay, there are plenty of really good eyepieces. In fact, one of the first things you may want to do if you decide you like the hobby is get some eyepieces, and there are decent ones for a good price. This lists online for $30, but you can get them for on the used market. You can get them for free, $5. They're just $30 retail. They're probably worth $10. In the $40 range, retail, $50 range, you can get better eyepieces, and that's something when you get into it, you'll want some good eyepieces. Okay. For example, I had this scope since I was 8 years old, and it's even smaller eyepieces, even worse feeling, smaller lens, 60 millimeter versus tiny. And because it's long and dim, you can't see much because it's a 60 millimeter versus 80 versus 100 versus 120. There weren't that many things I knew to look at, and so for 30 years, the only thing I saw in it was the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, probably Mars, Orion Nebula, Halley's Comet. Okay, but you can be happy with a garbage system if you don't use it that much. And I loved astronomy, I just didn't know where to point it. And then actually my story is in 2004, I bought a Nexstar 8i by Celestron, a go-to scope, and I saw more in one evening than my entire 30 years prior to that. So at some point you'll decide, hey, I'm into this and I want to do better, and that means better equipment. And so if you like, anytime you get a first scope, if you get into the hobby, you're gonna get rid of the initial equipment. And the question is, you throw it all out and start again, or do you want to upgrade what you got? And again, eyepieces are a really good thing to start with. If you got a good base system, find some eyepieces that are inexpensive. You want some medium range. Wide is important. The 1 1/4 will limit how wide you can go. And pointing a telescope at the Milky Way from a dark side is amazing. You want as wide as you can get. And then you want a couple other eyepieces. So you can do everything except the ultra wide 2-inch on this, and that's fine. You can have a really good career in the hobby with 1 1/4 eyepieces. Not a big deal. However, 2 inches, you see, I don't buy 1 1/4 eyepieces anymore. Everything I buy is 2 inches, just because it's a better feel. The other thing you'll get in the kit is a diagonal, okay? And the ones that come in the kit, this one's a Prism, which just means you can see left and right. So a mirror, or excuse me, coming through the scope, it reverses and makes it go upside down, but a diagonal will flip it'll correct the up and down. So if you're looking out the way there, it'll correct the up and down, but left and right will be wrong. A Prism actually switches the left and right, so you get looking on terrestrial stuff, the ground, people, and all that stuff. Your neighbor. We have broadband cable. We don't need that anymore, right? But anyway, your Prism has more glass in there, more mirrors, and it degrades. And especially the cheap ones, you're not going to see stars as clear as you will with better diagonals. Okay. For example, that one is a Prism diagonal, and it's $300 plus because I really wanted to see terrestrial left to right proper. When I'm looking at the moon and it's crescent this way, with a mirror diagonal, if you look at the moon through a refractor, it's going to left to right backwards. And to me, making that transition from I'm looking at the moon here and then in the telescope it's that way confused me. So I spent extra money on here. Did I show the 2-speed focuser? Okay, so one thing about focusing is this is a cheap focuser. It is the cheapest equipment possible. It is the cheap focusers. Not only the size, but the mechanisms there. It's a rack and pinion. So when you want something focused, you know, that one actually feels pretty smooth. Okay, that's good. This is a slightly bigger, you know, it's got a bigger axle, it's got the gearing should be better, it's got to move more weight, so it's sturdier, it's beefier, it's a little bigger. Still not real good. So high power, you're trying to focus something, you're going to be doing this a lot. Okay, and again, once you start doing the hobby a lot, there's a bunch of frustrations. There's a lot of frustrations. There's going to be a lot of frustrations using this. Okay, but there's still a lot of positives. And what you want to do when you start doing this a lot is you want to increase the capability, but you want to minimize the frustrations. And so there's variables that you want to get rid of. One of the variables is fighting for focus. Okay, your better focusers, I call them dual speed focusers. There's your coarse adjustment, which is probably equivalent to this, and then you got a fine focuser, which is like 10 times more precise. And focusing becomes a matter of magnification and atmosphere. It's no longer fighting with the scope. Okay, so there's times when the sky's real, you know, volatile and you can't get a really good focus at high power, but it's not your focuser. You're going to be doing this a little bit. Okay, it's a whole lot easier to then trying to get that high power focus with a single speed rack and pinion. Okay, so that is something you can. Upgrading focusers is a little more difficult, but I do recommend if you're going to buy that first kit, try to go to try to get the 2-inch. Okay, you do not need a dual speed right away. You can live a happy life with a single speed. Okay, but that is a plus if you can get that. Okay, so the biggest negative. And all right, so where the manufacturers who are selling a kit make their money up is, again, most of the good ones, most of the good manufacturers will start off with a good objective lens. So the lens tends to be reasonable and good, and there's a fixed cost on that. Everything else they can probably get manufactured somewhere else, and they can get it done cheap. So where they make their margin up when they're driving down the race to the bottom and the overall kit price is the eyepieces. Okay, I think I mentioned that. Eyepieces they're garbage. They're almost free. It costs them almost nothing. So that's but you still need a tripod. You need something to hold the scope up. Okay, so for the cheap one, you can see this is the Celestron 80 millimeter. This is the Celestron 102. This is like from here to here. The tripod on this is tiny, and it actually feels pretty good until you, okay? it's light, it's easy to carry, but the mount itself, if you just focusing, the whole thing will wiggle and vibrate. And if you don't know any better, you're thinking, well, that's just how telescopes are. It's not true. None of those vibrate. You pound it, it'll dampen out really quick. This just touching the focuser will have your image wiggling. Okay, and then it'll just wiggle for a while. Okay, again, that's two things. It's the tripod and the mount. The mount is the equipment between the tripod legs and the head of the tripod and the telescope itself. Okay, the tripod on the 102 much heavier, much more sturdy. Now it's carrying more weight, so it has to be so. Yeah, this is still more stable. Okay, so the tripod is where they just throw garbage out at you, and it's going to make your observing experience very difficult. You're not going to like it. If you like astronomy, you're like, I need a real tripod so that things are stable. So stability, and you want to be able to point it easily. So equatorial mounts are, often advertised. I bought one. That was the one I used for 30 years. It's more difficult than just pointing. Okay, altitude azimuth mounts are essentially side to side and up and down. Very intuitive, very easy to point. Okay, equatorial for tracking the stars, and if you want to just point there and it's aimed at the pole, if you just want to follow a bird in flight or a plane, it's very difficult to do that with an equatorial. If you just want to point at the moon or Jupiter, it's convoluted. So as a beginner, it's kind of frustrating. As an expert who's still trying to follow a bird or a satellite or a space launch, equatorial is really difficult. So you can't do astrophotography, long-term astrophotography with altitude azimuth mounts, but they're easy to use. Okay, but you want a standard altitude azimuth mount. So all these are pretty standard in the sense that they have a dovetail that is a saddle and dovetail combination that allow you to, any scope with a standard dovetail, Vixen and Losmandy are the two types, but you'll have a Vixen. This has a Vixen, comes with a Vixen dovetail, a short one that fits right on here, right in here. I have a longer one because one of the things about these all mounts really is you want to have it balanced. So my balance point is right about there. If I put a small eyepiece on it, the balance point is further here. So I just needed extra length on that. The one you get is going to be fine with the eyepieces you get. You put a 3-pound eyepiece on it, it's going to throw your balance off. Anyway, the point is, standard mounts allow you to just swap scopes. It allows you to upgrade scopes, throw anything you want on there. This will handle a very large telescope, so will this. This actually is I can put in a reflector on this, but having the standard parts allows you to upgrade and try other scopes, put other scopes on it. Okay, this is non-standard. Okay. One more point on this. The more expensive ones give you some finer tuning, and it's easier to just get the tuning just right. There's a knob right here. I can just point this around. Okay, same thing here. Okay, I can just point it. Okay, this one's going to be, because out of the box it's delivered for something that's going to be out of balance. It's not adjustable in this direction. Well, actually it is, but only less so. But out of the box is designed to be for scopes that are out of balance, too much weight on the front or too much weight on the back. What it will do is it'll be tight. So you can move this by hand, okay? And it may be too tight or maybe too loose. There's an adjustment on it. And actually right now it's pretty good. One of the things that may or may not come on your scope, and I think on your mount, the cheaper ones, they may have it just because it looks good, and two, because it's designed to be out of balance. You may need it for fine tuning. This may be too tight to track things with. These slow motion knobs, they call them slow motion control knobs, allow you to very precisely, once you're pointing at something, just use these to make the very small movements to track as the earth moves and the object moves out of the eyepiece, out of the field of view. This allows you to track it, okay? So that's a nice thing to have. So a mount that has standard dovetails, saddles, standard saddle, slow motion controls, okay? That the scope is mounted through the axis. Notice all these, the scope, the weight of the scope is through the axis of the altitude, okay? The old way they did it is they had, you know, the axis here and they mounted it right on top. Well, you throw the weight on top, it's like throwing the weight on a ball. It's gonna roll this way or roll that way. By putting the telescope in line with the axis, the altitude axis, it makes it less likely to go out of, you know, to go down or up. It makes it easier to adjust, okay? This were out of balance, it'd be hard to move, okay? I'd have to really tighten it, and then it'd be hard to move, and if I loosen it too much, it would fall. So standard dovetail, mounting the scope through the axis of the altitude there, okay, for balance, okay. This is really good. So a lot of people, even super duper experts, like to have slow motion controls on their mounts, okay. Most of mine do not. I don't. Really good for high power. You're not going to be doing high power on these beginner scopes, but and if you were to buy, the standard in this is the Vixen Porta II mount. So look that up, Vixen Porta. It's a really solid, strong mount for lightweight telescopes. Those run for, I think, about $300 or so. So you're not going to get a $300 mount in a $200 kit. So what they do is they make it cheaper. Okay, so I have a friend who says, "Oh, this mount is garbage." It's like, well, that's garbage. This is actually not what you would use as an expert, but it's all the right stuff, the right design, and it's yeah. See the wiggle? Okay, that's. More wiggle than I thought there about this. Okay. All right, so let's talk about this. And again, the advantage of this is on standard, you can change tripods on a lot of these. In fact, the Vixen, yeah, it's designed to be on some tripod, and Vixen sells tripods for it. But yeah, standard base, standard telescope attachment. And again, where the kit people make the money is by having cheaper, you know, it's the right design, just a matter of is it strong enough. And for the AZ102, it's all right. I like it. It's not bad. It's a nice lightweight, okay? Nice lightweight mount. The wooden one's heavy, and again, I got two scopes on this. I can put two scopes on this. I don't run off on a quick thing with this. This is fine. I can put this telescope on this mount, okay? So yeah, on the 102, it's not a terrible mount. Now back to the 90, I mean the 80 here, okay? And this is the primary negative on this scope, is you get a lot of vibration because it's not balanced. If I put a heavier lens or like that on that, it's going to be further out of balance. In order to keep it from tipping over either direction, they have this rod here, okay? If I loosen that up, let's see. Yeah, see, so a heavier eyepiece would actually kind of make it a little more balanced, but because it wants to nosedive, you have to always be adjusting this. So you're pointing it, not bad. You're always going to be locking it down when you get it on target. Now it does have a slow motion control here. Okay. Now the problem is things tend to go in the same direction. So in the sky, the Earth tends to spin in a constant direction at a constant speed. So you're always adjusting it, and eventually you're going to hit the end of it, and you're going to have to loosen it up, readjust it, recenter it, and then go to the other extreme of the length of the threading. It's a hassle, and while you're doing this, it's going to move off because it's a long focal length. You're going to miss the target, and it's going to vibrate. You may have to refocus. So tracking something, looking at an object for any period of time there's a level of frustration that's inescapable at this point with this equipment. It's just not well designed. It's cheap, okay? So is it viable? Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff on this. You're just going to be vibrating and changing, and You'll spend a greater percentage of your time trying to keep the target in a position to observe it than enjoying the observation of the target. Okay, so that's the negative. And the other big thing is, this is completely non-standard. I cannot use this decent scope. This telescope has some very strong suits. Not a $2,000 telescope strong suit, but a very nice Jupiter, Saturn, Moon is going to be reasonably high powered with good views, but it's on garbage. Okay, so if you were to buy this, you're like, hey, I'd like to hang on to this telescope because I like it, but I'd like to get it on something more stable. You can't. Okay, yeah, you can take all this stuff off. You can mount a dovetail on there, and frankly, out of the box, I mean, retail, those dovetails are $40. So just buy a kit that already has that. If you have this, you will be handing it, if you decide you're going to upgrade, and again, you can upgrade eyepieces, diagonals, that's it really. But that's a good start. You can learn how to point this, which is important. Learning how to point a scope, learning what the targets are, extremely valuable. So if someone gives you, I'm circling back around. So when someone gives you this scope for free, it has its limitations, and you're going to be more frustrated, and you may not experience the wonder that a $2,000 scope can give you, or a $300 Dobsonian, right? But there's opportunity there to have some wonder and some joy. You can do limited upgrading, so you can get some nice eyepieces, but you can learn the sky. You know, learn to use your phone app like Sky Safari and learn what to point at. That took me decades. And your phone actually is amazing on what you can learn and where to point it. But learning to point it, you can learn how to point it at the sky. You can learn where things are in the sky and use this scope to point at it. It's going to be frustrating because it's just, this is not, okay? This is better. I like these because it's just go wherever I want. But when someone gives you this scope and you're like, hey, I love astronomy and I'm into it. This is you're gonna get rid of this. Okay? Give it to a friend, show them this video so they're not too disappointed. But this one you can incrementally upgrade all sorts of things. So you never have to like throw the whole thing out and start over. I guess that's the essence of this. If you buy this has value. You can learn a lot, buy some eyepieces, keep the eyepieces, but you're gonna give this kit away. Okay. Maybe that's gonna be the title. You bought it, give it away. Maybe that's what the Chili Peppers were singing about. Give it away, give it away. Anyway, so if someone gives you this, it's like there are things that are valuable about it that you can enjoy, you can learn. There's a good platform to learn. But the first thing you'll learn is that I need a different system. This has a longer shelf life or a longer use life. A little less frustration, more opportunity to upgrade. You can just buy that Vixen mount and put this on it, and or buy some two-piece eyepieces. You have to buy a 2-inch diagonal and all that. But this allows you to build the equipment that you'll use throughout your hobbying career without having to throw away. This you don't ever really have to throw away. Okay. I will always hang on to something like this just because it's something you just throw in the car and go, or get banged up, or take it to an outreach. Okay, this one I have no use for. This is a giveaway, and again, I feel guilty because I'd feel better if I could give this one away, but I'm not because I like it. I love it. It has a really good use. This is a trap for first-time buyers. Again, if you're buying, just go to the standard. Okay. All right, I should really edit this down but it takes more time than the video. So, and thank you. So thanks for watching. All right, well, hey, have a great night, right? We'll see the moon, wonderful. Jupiter, Saturn, reasonably good. Okay, actually maybe better than this one because it's not working so hard. Hey, Hobbs, thank you. I'm filming here.